From Babel to Babel, Satan's kingdom on earth. In imagining to control the shape of things to come, the aspiration of despotic men throughout history has been to seize control and consolidate power, and this at the expense of all others who would in any way try to impede them. The end desired is always the same, a controlled collective society under absolute authority. This is apparent as far back as a historical record takes us. It is as true of Nimrod, Alexander the Great, or Caesar, as it is true of Hitler, Stalin, Mao, and others. It is also true of many powerful elitists today who, binding together, seek to engineer and rule over a global society. Ancient historical records cite Babel as the beginning of one world rulership. Although some might debate the existence of Babel, the concept contained within the story remains valid, being evidenced by the tyrannical civilizations which have followed ever since, even until today. It is noteworthy that in the accounts given of Babel, the concept of state replacing God is consistent with the kingdoms, empires, and nations which have followed. And not only so, but the totalitarian aspirations attributed to the first world state at Babel, as well as those which followed afterward, are no different than the aspirations of international power brokers today, who also seek to establish a strictly managed global society. Indeed, for in essence, the innate nature of man never changes, and neither do the invisible forces that drive and possess the children of men. Thus, being that the demons remain, history does indeed repeat. Likewise, among the subservient classes from the past into the present, the same fears and insecurities and desires continue to prevail. These inhibitions move the servant class to seek out and submit themselves to a controlling authoritarian. Thus, while work at the first tower at Babel has indeed ceased, the quest for a totalitarian world state has never ended, and neither shall it, not until the destruction of the final tower and the end of man's dominion on earth. In Book 1, Chapter 4 of Antiquity of the Jews, Jewish historian Flavius Josephus gives an account of the collectivist kingdom at Babel ruled over by Nimrod. Josephus wrote, "Now it was Nimrod who excited them to such an affront and contempt of God. He was the grandson of Ham, the son of Noah, a bold man and of great strength of hand. He persuaded the people not to ascribe it to God as if it was through his means they were happy, but to believe it was their own courage which had procured that happiness. He also gradually changed the government into tyranny, seeing no other way of turning men from the fear of God, but to bring them into constant dependence upon his government. Now the multitude were very ready to follow the determination of Nimrod, and to esteem it a piece of cowardice to submit to God. Thus Babel became the template of tyranny for those who would rule afterward, some even claiming authority in the name of God. Indeed, and history stands as a witness that the end of all such worldly powers is inevitable. For in the absence of God, corrupt rulers fill the void, which when the fullness of time comes, the absolute ruin of that civilization follows, never to rise again. Nonetheless, over time, the lesson is disregarded by the generations who follow, and the process of repeating the same cycle again perpetuates. Global Babylon, the ambition of Satan. Up to this point, the focus has been upon the build-up to destruction from a historical perspective. However, to truly understand the physical history and why it is so, understanding the spiritual world is a prerequisite. Ever since Lucifer was cast out of heaven and given the name Satan, his war with God has not ceased. Therefore, through the wisdom of God, he created a physical universe, and our planet in particular, as the theater for the war of good and evil to unfold until the end. Thus, in the beginning, God says, "Let there be light," and there was light, and God divided the light from the darkness. Indeed, for God, who knows all things, tells the end from the beginning encrypted with symbolism in the first chapter of Genesis. Being that Satan knows his days are numbered, his only recourse is to destroy luridly in an attempt to make God seem unjust or non-existent. Nonetheless, all the way from the gates of Eden, his every attempt to rule the world has never been complete. Each time Satan builds up an empire, God destroys it, and Satan starts over again. He has no choice. he will continue until the battle of Armageddon. According to the prophets, Satan will for a short time finally be allowed to set up his Antichrist kingdom, and then shall the end come and all things will be fulfilled. Today there exists a growing polarization between those who are for and those who are against a world state. Certainly those who dismiss the likelihood that it will soon materialize fail to realize the extent to which it already exists. By many, a world state is welcomed. It is anticipated with hope for a more secure and equitable global civilization. On the other hand, those who understand the nature and history of totalitarian idealists are aware of the immense destruction left in their wake. Those who understand are sounding the trumpet, warning that global tyranny is quickly approaching, that it is a threat, and that it will bring about oppression, global chaos, destruction, and death. Nevertheless, those who speak out find themselves ostracized. They are cast as nothing more than racist chicken littles to be delegated into the ranks of bigots and tinfoil hat conspiracy theorists. This is the pitfall Christians must be aware of, for the war is spiritual, not worldly. Our kingdom is not of this world. We must stand up and fight for God's rule of law, for the helpless, for the children, and for all who are oppressed and persecuted. However, put not your trust in man. A political war without a much greater spiritual effort will not prosper. Victory is in the power of prayer and declaring the Word of God. The coming international order is an attempt to resurrect Babel. It is man's godless vision to build a tower reaching unto the stars. It is driven by spiritual wickedness in high places. It is the ambition which of old has fueled Satan's obsession to be like the Most High. As mankind's first attempt to rule over the world began, so shall it end. God himself shall destroy their work forever. It shall be the final tower of rebellion.